Hi, I'm Christina from Event Dogs UK. I've got together with Claire from Noses to Toes' Dog Grooming, and we have a full tutorial for you today on grooming your dog during lockdown.
Hi, my name's Claire from Noses to Toes. I'm a dog groomer and I've been asked by Christina to give you some tips and maybe some tools on how to keep you going during this lockdown period and keeping your doggies happy.
This ended up being way bigger than we intended it to be. So you can see on the screen now the different timings for the different bits of information. So if you need to skip ahead, you can do. I think one of the things, there are various videos about the internet to do with grooming now, because I think a lot of groomers realised that owners were panicking. One of the things that I've not found another one that covers it is what do you do if your dog hates being groomed? They won't stand still, they don't like it. And I think my advice might slightly differ to some of the groomers. So here goes. When I was about 6 years old, I started doing my own hair. Now this was because my mum was very, very practical when it came to brushing hair, and I've always had long, thick hair that gets tangled quite easily. And so she really went at it. She determinedly brushed my hair, and I think I was about 6 when I started doing my own hair because she didn't mean to hurt me. She was trying to be a really good mum, but she pulled. I'm a lot older than 6 now, and I can still remember her trying to do my hair. And I hated it, so I did my own. Now, our dogs can't do their own grooming, and so part of the problem is if we hurt them, if they feel forced, then they're not going to be happy about it. I discovered with my dogs, I have to say with my dogs I have been guilty of being a little bit like my mum. I discovered that my 3 short-coated dogs, when I got the brush out, they would choose to come and be groomed. So my 2 Great Danes, my Basset Hound, adored grooming, would lie upside down with their feet in the air, absolutely love it. 3 of my 4 long-coated dogs, the second you get a brush, you don't see them. So I had a very long-coated German Shepherd, my 2 long-coated Border Collies, and my Chihuahua. I actually got it right with my Chihuahua, and I'm going to tell you how. So the way I taught him is a little bit different. There are 2 different ways that you can approach this. This is the way that, particularly if the dog has already decided they don't like it, I would teach them to accept being groomed. The main thing I think you need to remember is your dog, when we come out of lockdown, your dog is not going to be put to sleep because they have got a tangle in their coat or you've had to randomly cut a bit of coat off. Their coat will regrow. If you have such a battle with your dog that they end up with aggression problems, and then that then generalises to being handled full stop, and they're biting, actually that's a serious issue. So when you come out of this lockdown, you need to be seeing your groomer. You don't want to be seeing a behaviourist. Remember that at all times. This is not a battle, or if it is, it really shouldn't be. So that's one thing. Secondly, is teaching your dog how this is going to work. So remember, if dogs are uncomfortable, we all know about fight or flight. So they're either going to threaten you, bite the brush, bite you, or they're going to run away. There's also fooling around and freezing. So they might just freeze, they might be carrying and freezing, or just go really, really still. Or they might fool around. They're going to be biting the brush, playing, spinning. All of those are stress responses. So it isn't just that your dog's being really silly, it's that they're just not comfortable. So groomers, most of the groomers I've heard will say, put the dog up in a table and then they'll behave themselves up there and it'll be fine. Yes and no. So bearing in mind that groomers are used to handling dogs on tables. So first of all, they're used to handling the dog up there. Secondly, they have a non-slip table. Thirdly, if they are half decent, if the dog is going to be restrained up there, it's going to be done in a safe manner. I have visions of a whole load of pet dog owners who've put their dogs on tables who are either going to fall off, or they're going to slip, or they're going to be restrained and then slip and hang themselves, or they're going to be up there and feel trapped and then start getting defensive. So I see why groomers give that advice, and certainly if dogs are just generally a bit fidgety, then yeah, they might, if they're used to being groomed as a groomers, they might stand and behave better on a table. I wouldn't recommend it. The only time I would possibly consider it is if you have mobility problems and you can't get on the floor. And so one option would be if you've got a small dog, put a blanket on the sofa, get your dog on the sofa and groom them on there, and then just shake the blanket outside. That's one way of doing it. Or if you've got mobility problems but you've got a big dog, they can stand up to be groomed and you can sit down. It's that kind of medium-sized dog that you might want to just pop them on something. Just make sure it's safe. Make sure it's, yes, sweetheart, it's you in a minute, hello. So this is Shy. Shy was nearly 2 when he came to me. I don't think he'd ever been groomed. He had thick grease through his coat, and the dandruff was so bad it was as if all his skin had died, lifted and got caught in the grease. It was just disgusting. And I remember the first time I ever put a slicker brush through his coat, he just span on the spot. So with him, I have had to teach him about grooming. And so I will take you step by step how we did that. So first of all, you need treats. And the first thing you need is just your hand. No grooming brush. This is a training thing. This is not all about the grooming. It's teaching the dog to be groomed. So, there we are. Can you stand up? Up. Good boy. So here we have, I'm going to have his treats. Now, as long as he's happy to be here, his treats are here. You can see his treats are here. All I'm going to do, I don't mind if he sits or stands at this stage. All I'm going to do is teach him, wait, run my hand down him, good. And my good is you've earned yourself a treat. That's all that means to him. It's a marker word. Wait. Good. I find dogs, they tend not to initially overly like the feel of a slicker, and I don't think they like the noise. So I will be using a slicker because that's the brush that his coat needs, but I'm not going to use it straight away. The next stage after using my hand is I'm just going to literally drag a comb over the surface. Can you see I'm not actually going through his coat yet? Good. Good boy. Yeah. So I'm just using his dinner for this, but you might find that with your dog, initially, if they really hate being groomed, you might need some tasty treats. Next stage is actually starting to allow some of that to just drift through the coat, and obviously the wider the comb, the better. Good boy. And then actually, once he's quite happy with you doing that, you can then literally, all you're going to do is ever so lightly, just across the surface of the coat, good, drag the slicker brush, if that's what you need with your dog's coat. A lot of dogs do need slicker brushes, so yeah, it's quite a good one to get them used to. And then all I'm going to do is very gradually start using it properly as a brush. Good boy. And literally, few little brushes, reward, few little brushes. So he is in training mode. He's not in relaxed, just being brushed mode. I mean, he is because he's used to being brushed now. But you need to switch your dog into training mode of this is what we do. It's a new training thing. I am not restraining him. He could leave if he wanted to. If he is choosing to bail out, I would generally say for most dogs, your treats might not be nice enough, or you're moving too quickly with the brushes, go back to using your hand. If your dog has handling issues, then you might literally need to start with getting them used to being touched on the side nearest to you, just on the side of their shoulder. Don't be grabbing around here or round here, and just then onto the front of their chest, and then working your way round until they're happy to be handled. So that's training-wise how I get him used to it. Benji. Good boy. So this is Benji, and Benji's kind of going to demonstrate how it should be done. So I always had lots of friends whose dogs adored being groomed, and they would just snuggle up on the floor. The dog would be upside down with its feet in the air, half asleep, completely relaxed, very happy with being groomed. And that was just because my friends groomed their dogs just as a way of bonding and getting the dogs used to it. It wasn't that the dog desperately needed grooming, it was that was something they did together. So that's what I've tried to do with Benji. The most tricky thing, come here, hello, is actually wrestling Benji out of his jumper. He's very attached to his jumper. I did, when we had the couple of days of good weather, I did manage to get him out of his jumper. But as you'll see, given half a chance, he just ends up putting it back on again. So actually, because that jumper has been on all the way through winter, good boy, then his coat where the jumper is actually duller and a little bit dustier. It doesn't have the same sheen because it just hasn't had the amount of stroking and handling. Even though I groom him, it's not quite the same as on his head and lower down. So at some point he'll probably need a bit of a bath just to freshen up and get some of that dust out of that coat. All I do is just do a tiny bit and we just, oh, it's beautiful, boy. Aren't you so beautiful? And we always start with the wide comb just to get any little tangles out, don't we, Benjamin? And we talk in this tone of voice because it needs to be relaxing and nice. Yeah, as a chi-chi. Oh, it's a chi-chi. And we gradually work round to those bits, don't we, Benji? Oh, so good boy. And then, what do we do then, Benjamin? We then do our slicker brush. Isn't that nice? And then gradually, can I see that? Oh, it's a beautiful chi. Are you beautiful chi? Yes, you are. And so it isn't that this is a training thing. This is just fuss. And we admire him and tell him he's very beautiful. And he thinks that's a good idea. And just gradually working the way through the coat. Did you want your jumper back on, Benji? Come on then. This one? Good lad. There. Hi. Next, I want to welcome Claire, who is a professional dog groomer at Noses to Toesies Dog Grooming in Lincolnshire. Claire, can you give us some idea as to what the different coat types are of dog breeds and what sort of grooming equipment you would use for those different types of coats?
There is a smooth coated breed. Now they generally are your Great Danes, your Bulldogs, your Boxers, your Bull Terriers, Staffordshire Bull Terriers. Now they've got really short fur, really close to the skin, the fur that generally gets tangled in all sorts of clothes. It sits very close to the skin, to the body. Generally their skin can be quite sensitive, so you don't want to use any harsh tools on them. So the one thing that I do use on those sorts of breeds, I get quite a few Bulldogs actually, is a rubber brush. Hope you can see that. Now this is by Kong and it's called a Zoom Groom. You can actually get them for cats as well, and it's completely soft. The bristles are cone shaped, and all you would need to do is rub circular or long motions, just work all the way in their fur. Obviously they've got the same fur on their face and legs, it's short all over. This picks up so much, and I think a lot of the time they feel like they're getting just lots of fuss. So, and they're a lovely dog to be able to groom with those coats. So really soft, just keep working it out, and all of the loose fur will come out. So that's a really good tool to have. I also use these in nearly every dog that I bath, regardless of what coat they have, because once I've got the shampoo or conditioner on, just massaging it in and it gets deeper into the coat, deeper into the skin, lifts up all the dirt and things like that, so they're really good to have. As it's a Kong one, I think I actually purchased it on Amazon, so you can pick them up really easily, and it fits really nice into the palm of your hand. Great tool.
So we're going to talk about short-coated dogs. Here is my Great Dane, who's got a very short coat. It's the sort of fur that sticks in the bottom of your feet if it's around about the house and you're walking with bare feet. So it really is very short, very sharp little bits of fur. And you're going to need three things, or I am: a hand mitt, And well, I use a Furminator. I think Claire's going to mention about the Kong, I think it's Zoom Groom, which also looks a really good idea. So the first thing I tend to do with his coat, and he absolutely loves it because he thinks it's massage, is literally start rubbing it the wrong way, and it lifts that coat and just gets the other bits out from underneath. You can see poor Roo is looking a bit like a patchwork quilt at the moment. He's had heart test monitors on him, blood tests taken, and random shaved fur all over the place. And so in his case, I'm going to be really, really careful that I don't go on any of these bits that have got very, very thin fur, and I'm just going to focus on his back where the thicker fur is. So you can see on his back, Roo has got some really quite thick fur, and as I'm doing this you can see that it's starting to come off. Some people use a washing up glove, just that rubber helps to get this undercoat, well, this coat out, and so you'll see that's lifting and loosening a lot of this fur. And with him I help to just give him a good rub down all over so that he's feeling as if he's having a massage at the same time. And you can see, again, he had a spinal operation 6 months ago, so this fur is actually not as dense as other. Round the bottom bit, it's coming out all over the place. He hasn't had a groom for a couple of weeks, so yes, he really does quite often need this to get all that dead coat out. The next thing I do is, this is just a grooming mitt, and so it's a rubbery silicone pad, and do the same thing but with this on. And again, it's good old scratch to get this undercoat out. That's Benjamin thinks he's found either a squirrel or a pigeon in the bush over there. There we are. Good boy, babe. So you can see a whole load of this is starting to come out. Just show you that quite quickly ends up on the pad. Oh, is that nice, dude? Yeah. Again, he's 13 and has lost a massive amount of muscle tone. So I'm just being careful that I'm going really gently over all these bony bits. He's got a very bony bum now, and also his shoulders and his spine. So it's just making sure that it's comfortable and nice for him. Nice. Finally, when you have got the worst out, this is a Furminator, and it's really, really tiny little teeth that go through the fur and just get any dead coat out. And again, I'm only going to do that on the bits of him where he's got his densest fur, so I'm not going to go anywhere near his chest or his tummy with it, particularly not nowadays. The back of his neck, you can see in the teeth it picks it up very quickly. Good boy. Nice. Oh. Good lad. And again down at the bottom of his spine. See that that's really helping pick that up.
Okay, next up is the short coated breeds. They are your Basset Hounds, your Labradors, your Jack Russells, so they've got slightly longer fur than the smooth coated. For these I use what's classed as an undercoat rake. This one's by Andis and it's got small teeth, if you can see there. Really, it doesn't hurt at all, completely fine to you, you're not hurting your skin by doing that. It removes a lot of dead fur and some downy undercoat that they may have. Great tool. It really lifts a lot of fur out. A lot of Labrador owners are surprised by how much fur can come out properly with these. They say, I brush it all the time. and they get a lot of fur out, but they're always surprised how much I can get piles and piles of fur out with these from a Labrador. Yeah, great tool. I also use them as well if I have any Westies in. I think Westies are the only sort of ones that I would have in that are between their grooms. They have pet trim, so they don't have a very long hair or fur. And that gets a lot of their undercoat out as well, so it makes clipping them a lot easier. So that's for my short-coated breeds. And again, I would always sort of give them a little massage afterwards with the rubber.
Cookie. Right, we're going to do your grooming. We're going to do some grooming. So the next dog I'm going to groom is Wilma. Hello. She loves the fuss. As far as she's concerned, it is just fuss and cuddles. She's got slightly longer fur than Roo. Thank you, sweetie. I don't really need a cob. You have your cob. And go away, go on. So Wilma has slightly longer fur than Roo. Her fur also isn't quite as dense. It's very, very silky. To be honest, she doesn't need an awful lot of brushing. She gets so much fuss and cuddles from us that I think any dead fur just comes out anyway. What she does need is, obviously being a basset hound, she needs her ears cleaning out about once a week. But as far as brushing, she only really needs just the grooming mitt. And the silicone little teeth just get through the coat to the skin and just get any dead fur out. So you can see little bits coming out. Isn't that nice, Woman? Yeah? Awesome. Actually, you can tell she really is shedding. She doesn't normally shed this much. Obviously, she's decided it's springtime and she's getting rid of her winter coat. She's been quite gentle and just using my fingertips for this with the grooming mitt. And because she's got so much extra skin, then I really need to be careful that I don't pull that in the wrong direction. It's a good girl. They're nice. Hi. Beautiful chest. Have you got a beautiful chest? Yeah, beautiful girl. Yeah, that's a good girl. I promise you she's still alive. Mama! Hi! Hello, sweetie girl.
Then we go on to combination coats. Combination coats could be your Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, your long-haired Chihuahuas, Border Collies, Golden Retrievers. They have a combination of long silky fur as well as short guard fur. Shorter fur around their face, front of their legs, but longer, silkier fur on their back furnishings, down the sides and their undercarriage. The longer coat obviously tends to form more knots because it's more exposed, will drag on the floor, on their beds, that sort of thing. So what I use for them are slicker brushes. You can see with that one that's got shorter teeth than this one. Now, depending on what dog I've got in, I would use either or. The other thing to watch out for on combination coats, where they've got longer fur, and the other breeds that I'm going to talk about soon, is that their pads on the bottom of their feet, the fur grows around their pads and in between their toes. So it's always a good idea to look underneath there and trim that where necessary, as well as where it comes up to their heel. Obviously, just be careful with scissors working around your pet's feet. Hopefully your pet doesn't mind you touching their feet. Not all dogs, regardless of whether they're used to having their feet touched, mind a groomer touching them or not. But certainly that is the place where all the dirt and debris, especially when it's been wet and it's dried, it can get clumps of the fur as well as the dirt that's trapped in there. So it's always a good idea to check in those areas. Also, with those sorts of coats that have got a little bit more length, when they're dried and bathed and dried, you can always go through with a comb. And I know it's not easy to dry a dog at home, especially with a hairdryer, and our dryers in the salon are blasters and they're finisher dryers that they can work through the coat a lot quicker. But it's always nice that if you have worked and tangle out or brush them, just to know that you have actually got it out by using a comb. It's another good tool to have.
So the first thing, and I've deliberately not groomed him for a few weeks so you guys can see what a proper grooming session I need to do with him. So sweetheart, can you stand? Oh, good boy. So all I'm going to do to begin with is just using this, and all I'm going to do is, can you see this is fluff that's coming out? That's the undercoat that's just coming out, and I'm just, yes, that's lovely, clouds of fur. I can tell you're molting, sweetie. Hey, there's a good boy, good lad. Yeah. Oops, is he there? There. Good boy. Come. So you would then go all the way through and you would get out the undercoat with the grooming rake. Okay, so that was just with the grooming rake with the long prongs that get through. Obviously be careful when you use that, you don't push down into the skin, and literally you're just gliding it through the coat. So that's got out certainly the worst of the undercoat. You were definitely ready for a groom, weren't you, Poppet? Now, if your dog is not used to grooming, can I suggest little and often is the way to go. So just a couple of minutes each day till they get used to it. He is used to being groomed. Dear, that gets everywhere, doesn't it, sweetheart? There we are. And so we're now going to move on to the slicker brush. And I just start at the back of the neck and just work down here, down the sides, down the front, and then down the legs, and then we do trousers and tail last with him. So, Shy, can you turn around and face people? You come here. I need you that way, darling, so the camera can see. So all I do is just rest that so I can do this. Oh, I know you're such a good boy. Yes, you are. You're a good boy. Oh, yeah, good. Now, because he's used to grooming, he doesn't always have treats as he's groomed. But he has learnt to be an extremely good boy and just stand there and let you get on with it. Yeah, you are a good boy. Come here. Come. Good boy. Yes, a good lad. Okay, so I'm making sure that my hand is catching the brush, so that's on me, not on him, because I don't want to be hurting his skin. Remember that you've already got right through to the skin with your grooming rake. And so this is starting off with the top layer. Now his coat is actually thin enough for the slicker brush to get right through to his skin. With thicker coated dogs, it may be that you sort of part a bit, do a bit, part a bit, do a bit, and just work your way around. Claire's going to talk you through that with her cockapoo, because that's obviously a really useful grooming technique for thicker coated dogs. And so finally, I'll do both sides in a minute, but finally you're then going to do trousers. Good boy. Wait, back, back, back. What a good lad. That's super. So, here it's really important that you manage to get all the tangles out of these, but do a tiny bit at a time. Good lad. Oh, you are such a clever boy. Aren't you nice? Good boy, you have that. So that you're working just a tiny little bit of the coat. If you find that you've got a tangly bit, now actually I haven't with him, but if you've got a tangle that you cannot get out, the way I would use scissors, here we are, I'm sitting on them, is get the scissors, open them and get the back of the scissors as close to the skin as you can, and instead of chopping off that way, try and cut the length of the fur. So if you've got a mat sort of in the middle bit here, you cut down through it, so you're cutting down the middle of the mat. Partly it means that the back of the scissors are towards the dog, so you're not going to cut your dog. And if you've got a really matted tangled bit, sometimes it's actually quite hard to tell what is skin and what is fur and tangles, particularly if they've managed to get sort of half their walk in their coat and you haven't noticed. It isn't something that happens with him anymore. With my long-haired German Shepherd, occasionally around her trousers I'd miss a bit and she'd got either a burr or a tangle or something. Top tip that I've discovered with, well, certainly with her, is do not try and take the burr out of the coat. Take the coat out of the burr, which sounds odd. If you try and pull the burr or the sticky bird or whatever it is that's tangled in the coat out, all you're going to do is end up with it more and more tangled. Instead, leave it where it is, peel little bits of fur out from whichever bit's tangled and gradually sort through it until you can then take the burr out. If you find that that's not working, cut, again, back of the scissors towards the dog, cutting away down the length of the coat through the middle of the matted bit, and often you can kind of tease it out from there, and that way you haven't got a great big chop. If you are finding that the whole thing is just a big mess, your dog is getting stressed about it all, at that point, make sure you don't cut their skin, just chop it out. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Let's just get through this lockdown, and then you can apologise to your groomer, blame it on me, and hand them however randomly chopped your dog is by that point. Try not to make them look too stupid, but if there are the odd bit that you just need to cut out because it's in a tangle, then do. It is important that your dog is groomed because they need the air to circulate through to the skin. Tangles, and particularly matted bits near the skin, really, they get tight, they pull. I don't know if you've had your hair being pulled at any point, then it's really not nice, and it's permanently like that when it's matted, so be really careful. And again, if you've got longer coated dogs, particularly combination coats, so particularly any of the poodle crosses, you are likely to find, unless you're careful, you'll have beautifully groomed top part of coat. You won't have managed to get underneath the coat. You need to get into the coat to actually get next to the skin to get those tangles and those matted bits out fully. Again, Claire's going to show you how to do that later. Anyway, so that's trousers. Tail I view like a ponytail, really. My husband teases me and says it's kind of dressing up Dolly all over again. I'm just going to take hold of his tail. This fluffy bit, the end of his tail is about here, so I've got hold of his end of his tail. So literally this is just the coat. And I start at the end and gradually work up, so I'm adding a little bit more to the mix and just doing it at different angles, so I'm getting through that coat all the way through to the rest of him. So I'll carry on with that and I'll come back and tell you the next bit in a sec. So as you can see, we now got fur all over the carpet. The last thing that I will then do is use the scissors. Now, this is not a hospital drama. This is not Casualty where they run at them with scissors. Do not rush at your dog with a pair of scissors and try to give them a haircut. Again, back to my dear mother, I remember before one school photo, she managed to, well, my fringe was apparently a bit long and she gave it a bit of a trim. I had virtually no fringe left by the time she'd finished with it, and it wasn't straight, and actually the school photo, I just had braces on my teeth done. So a combination of, she said, keep your mouth closed, dear, and they won't see the braces. Then I got my hair. We kept the photo because it was so bad. So quick cautionary tale, don't be in a hurry to start cutting your dog's fur. Just because we're in lockdown, it does not make you a professional dog groomer. So just Try and minimise the amount of damage that you're going to do. That said, you will probably find that you end up needing to trim their feet. So I'm just going to show you with Shy. He also needs his claws clipping. We're going to do that in a separate tutorial all on claw clipping. There are 4 different ways of clipping claws, and I have 4 different dogs, all of whom I cut their claws in completely different ways. So we'll tackle that on another occasion. But for the minute, here are scissors, and it's Shy's feet. Shy, I'm delighted that you're relaxed. Could you stand up though, please? Come. So, what you're going to see is, if you see now, I promise I'm not doing claws. Wait a minute, come here. Come. That's good boy. Can you sit? Good boy. So, can you see, if I pull up, he's got all this fur through there. All I'm going to do is never ever go down in between the toes with the scissors. All you're going to do is just run your thumb up through there. I know it tickles, doesn't it? I know, I'm sorry. There we are. And then all I'm going to do, wait. There. And then I'm going to do that for each toe. The other thing I'm going to do is, if we can see in between the pads, can you see that we've got all this tufty bit? Now, it depends on your dog. So, hi sweetheart. My previous Border Collie, the way he ran and stopped was he'd run about 35 miles an hour and then literally slam his feet down. And so he would skid to a halt, and the number of times he shredded his pads because he just slammed them on the ground, and if it was certainly slightly rougher ground, then he just skinned his pads. It was horrible. So I used to leave him with a bit more fur. Now eating your fur, thank you dog. I used to leave him with a bit more fur in between his pads because he needed that protection. Shy doesn't. Shy stops when he runs in a very different way and uses his body differently, so he doesn't need that same protection until I remove the extra so it doesn't get all wet and smelly and dirty. So if you can just see, all I'm going to do is keep the scissors flat, and I'm just going to cut. So you're going to cut flat, and then if you see you've got your stopper pad, be really careful you don't do anything with your stopper pad, but let's turn around the other way so people can see. Try this way, come here. Good boy, I know. So he's a dog that tolerates being groomed rather than particularly loving it. If you see, those down for a sec, if you see between his stopper pad here and his actual foot, you've got this tufty bit. I just tend to trim that a little bit as well. So I just tend to just trim up there. Wait, good boy, wait. Being very careful about that stopper pad. I tend to just sort of shape this in a little bit as well. Just so it's less to get wet and smelly and yuck. And I try to make it look a little bit less hacked. Come, good boy. Just so that it's a bit easier to keep clean and tidy. That is the only brushing, trimming of his coat that I would do. I'll finish off this foot in a second, and then that's him done. One dog down. Yes. Good boy. You are so. Thank you, darling. Good boy. Thank you. I know you're a good lad. Yes.
Okay, so next up would be your double coated breeds. They would be your German Shepherds or Huskies, that type of thing, that's certainly got double coats. So it's the undercoat as well as the harsher outer coat. So they have sort of straight to moderate fur all over their body. The outer coat is normally harsher, and then they have a soft downy undercoat. For this type of breed, I use a rake. This one's generally for long-haired German Shepherds. It's just got more teeth than this one. Maybe you can see very well. And the arch on the teeth are sometimes a little bit different. If you had that one for a larger dog, it would be fine. You just got to work it a little bit more. But that is removing their undercoat. What I also do as well when I'm working my way all over the dog's body, always start from the back of the head to the base of their tail and keep working within long motions. Always use your hand to feel along the dog's body, so you know that you haven't got any more dense areas compared to another, and just keep on working through that area if it is more thicker than another. Again, it doesn't hurt your skin. It would only really hurt your dog if you come to a knot, which you'd need to remove first, really. But yes, they're undercoat rakes for your double coated.
This is a Mars Coat King. They are brilliant. They're hooked little blades that get through to the undercoat, and they bring the undercoat out and leave the top coat. Now, I had as I mentioned, very, very long-haired German Shepherd. After she was spayed, her undercoat went mad, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew, and it wouldn't groom out, it wouldn't molt out. It just, I mean, she looked like a sheep, bless her. And this was what got that undercoat under control. So it just stripped out the undercoat, didn't hurt her at all, just got it out and left the top coat. So she looked far more sensible, and I think felt a lot more comfortable as well without that really thick undercoat. My previous Border Collie, he needed it just a tiny bit. Sometimes his undercoat could get a little bit carried away, but generally didn't need this. His coat isn't thick enough, so he doesn't need a Mars Coat King, but I will be using a grooming rake on him.
Also, they are used for silky coated. I would use perhaps a combination of, depending on how long, this rake for Springer Spaniels, Cocker Spaniels and Setters to get through their fur as well, and finishing up with a slicker. And then you have the heavy coated breeds. They are your Newfoundlands, St. Bernards, Mountain Dogs, and also Pomeranians. They've got the thick, long, silky coat, and only a very short amount of, or a very small amount of short coat, which is generally on their face. They are very prone to getting knots and tangles. I would try and get any knots, use a slicker brush through the coat first, working my way, and then I would go to a rake. Again, I would use this one because generally it would be a bigger dog that I would need to work on. So it would give me a bit more coverage whilst working through. Their skin can be prone to sores if they're not groomed regularly, or certainly bathed and just so their coat can part, so they can get sores and infections quite easily due to the lack of air circulation because they're such a heavy coated breed. So the other thing as well, as mentioned with all the others, bar the smooth and short coated, is the pads of their feet. Always check the pads of the feet and trim any long fur that comes out between their toes and also underneath their pads. It's always a good idea to look in those areas and remove anything. Dogs obviously will lick their feet and try and remove it themselves, so if you could kind of help them by not making anything sore. Last but by no means least are the natural long-haired dogs. They generally are mostly toy breeds, but then there are a few biggers. There's the Shih Tzus, the Yorkshire Terriers, the Lhasa Apsos, the Maltese, and then going on to the bigger dogs, the Briards or the bearded collies. Now, I would work all the way through that with a slicker brush. Most people who do have those toy breeds generally have them clipped, so you wouldn't need to worry too much about making sure their longer fur is tangle free, but certainly work through it with a slicker brush. And then when you know you are smooth, use a comb. If you have got the Briards or anything longer that are kept natural, work all the way through with a slicker. Again, checking their pads for the long fur and keeping those trimmed.
So here's my gorgeous boy, all beautiful. You can see lovely, soft, shiny coat, really, really silky, really, really easy to get my fingers through. Nice, trimmed, neat little feet. As far as bathing goes, I wouldn't be in a hurry to overbath your dog. So I only bath my dogs a few times a year. Certainly not every week, because it strips all of the oils out of their coat. So a few times a year. Some of your dogs at the groomers will need doing every 6 to 8 weeks. That's okay. Dogs should not smell doggy. My dogs generally don't smell doggy. And part of that is they need to be groomed quite regularly. Part of that is their beds need to be clean. If you think about the amount of time when they're sleeping in their bed, if their beds smell nasty, then it's going to be onto their coat. Whereas actually their coat can be cleaned by having a nice clean bed. So keep the beds clean. The other thing is, obviously, if they roll in something disgusting, then yeah, they do need a bath. And so, yeah, there will be times when they need a full bath. If they've just been in general kind of mud and what have you, I tend to kind of just rinse them off rather than giving them a full bath. So I tend to go by how disgusting they are at that given moment. The only other things to be aware of are eyes. They often get sleepy dust in the corners of their eyes. So all of my dogs, just every morning, I'll just literally take a finger and just wipe it away from their eye, not into the eye. The other thing is ears. His ears generally don't need cleaning. My collie's ears generally haven't needed cleaning. My Great Dane's ears, I tend to just wipe with the tissue and he has allergies, and so it depends what his allergies are doing as to whether or not he's got slightly waxy ears. And I just wipe excess wax out. My Basset Hound, her ears need doing more regularly, obviously because they've got that closed up ear canal that just, it harbours gunk and dirt. Different people will give you different opinions on what you should be using. Never, ever use cotton buds. I know of one person who's got a cotton bud stuck down their dog's ear. And the dog needed an operation to remove it, so never do that. I don't use cotton either because I don't want any bits that can get stuck. I just use a tissue and a finger and wipe it out. Some vets will recommend ear cleaner. My old vet said if you're going to be, obviously with a Basset you want to do it about once a week. You're going to get down then, off you go, good lad. So if you're going to be cleaning ears about once a week, you don't want to keep using chemicals. So what this vet recommended, which I think is a really good idea, is a little bit of salt, maybe a teaspoon of salt, and then boiling water in a mug. Let the whole thing go cold. And so you've got the saline solution, and literally if you've got a syringe, just syringe it into the ear, pour it into the ear, and then just wipe it out. Don't take my advice on this because it's going to be different for each dog. Take your groomer's advice, or if you have a dog like a Basset or a dog that gets dirty ears, then you need your vet's advice. It's possible that they might have an ear infection. It's possible that they might have ear mites. So really your vet is the person that you need to be speaking to if they've got ears that keep getting dirty. Always sniff your dog's ears as well if they smell of anything at all, be it sweet or really disgusting. Both of that is a sign that the ear isn't as it should be. So again, give your vet a quick ring and see what they suggest. The only other thing that I haven't mentioned about grooming is anal glands. Now, these are scent glands near your dog's bottom that most dogs, you won't even know they've got them. They empty when the dog goes to the loo. This is not a problem. Some dogs, they end up getting blocked quite easily, and it's possible to empty them from the outside of the dog's body. A couple of my dogs need this, not many of them, but some of them do. From time to time. I'm not going to show you how to do that, mostly because I think it would be better for somebody to be able to show you how to do this and partly because if you get it wrong, you'll hurt your dog. So I really don't want to give you advice that might hurt your dog. What I will say is, if your dog is sitting on its bottom and sort of scooting across the floor, it might be they've got worms, but it might be that they need their anal glands cleaning. And if they smell fishy, that almost always is that they need their anal glands cleaning. And sometimes if they are particularly licking and bothering around that area, again, they need emptying. My advice would be give your vet a quick ring and see if they're able to, maybe there's a vet nurse at your practice that can kind of, you can take your dog in, and they'll probably take your dog off you during the lockdown and take them into the vets to go and sort that out. Or they might be able to give you some other advice as well. So if you find that you're having problems with that, then I would probably give your vet a quick ring. Now, I know there's quite a lot of people out there who have got dogs with quite tricky coats to groom, particularly some of the poodle crosses, particularly thinking of things like cockapoos. And Claire actually has her own cockapoo, and so she's going to do a full groom with him that you can use to help you groom your own dog during this lockdown.
Hi, this is my dog Teddy. He's a miniature cockapoo. Now, cockapoos come under the combination coated breed, as they are a combination of silky coated for the cocker and poodle coated, wool coated with the poodle. The best type of brush to use is the slicker. Now, as I mentioned before, I use a long tooth slicker simply because cockapoos come to us in all different lengths. As I'm sure most of your groomers would have told you, anything between 4 and 8 weeks is best to get your dog groomed, just so their coat is kept on top of, and depending on what length you like your dog. So I always go for the long toothed one, so it can get through and penetrate to the skin and remove the curls. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to break through the curls, and when you'll notice that when you start brushing, the curls will be removed and they get fluffy. So the areas that need most attention is the muzzle area and ears, and especially underneath the ears, because they don't get a lot of air and it's a lot of friction with moving. So they're muzzle, ears, underneath the ears. Their chest also is one of the areas that can get quite tangled, especially under their armpits. Now, I always, and I think it's because I'm an owner of the cockapoo, I always, when they come in for clipping, clip out their armpits, simply because Teddy's used to wearing a harness as well, so that's where the friction goes. And if it's on a wet day and they dry and they haven't been dried properly, it can clump and cause knots under their armpits, and they're quite difficult to actually remove with clippers. So I always clip them out with a combination coat. And then obviously their legs, closer to their feet, are normally the harder areas to get in. Next areas to look at is the top of the head. Obviously that's one of the places that we fuss them the most. The sides of the dog and their tail, that needs a lot of attention sometimes, but not as much as the areas that I previously mentioned. The least attention is the back. Again, it's because it gets a lot of fuss, and it doesn't get the friction. Obviously, if your dog wears a harness, keep a look at those areas, because again, if it's wet and damp, the friction of the harness and the coat can create some knots as well. Never forget that when you are working on your back legs, don't ever forget to go on the inside of the legs, because a lot of people do miss that, and that's where again the friction with sitting and laying can often cause knots. Knots obviously form close to the skin, not on the ends of fur, very rarely on the ends of fur, so you need to be able to penetrate down to the skin to be able to lift the fur free. Okay, so the best thing to do is to work in sections. I generally start by working on the legs, So take your dog's foot, lift some of the fur back, and then start brushing. Working your way all the way round. Obviously not on the pads. You'll start to notice, Teddy's fur is quite short at the minute, but you'll start to notice that the curls are being straightened and he will get fluffier as you are breaking up the curls. Again, pay particular attention to in his armpits. Obviously always feeling at the same time to make sure that they're smooth and there isn't any knots that you can feel at the time. Just work on this one very quickly. Good boy. Obviously give them lots of praise when they're doing the right thing. Good boy. Again, working on the inside of the legs. Don't ever forget those areas because they're the bits that get the most friction. Good boy. Wait. Good boy. Yeah, fluffy legs. Okay. Now, top of the head. Normally work obviously away from their eyes because you don't want to get the teeth of the brush caught on their eyelids, or certainly not their eyeballs. And then muzzle. Now I don't know how your dogs would feel about you touching them around their muzzle. Teddy doesn't always mind me holding him like that. Sometimes it's easier to hold them with the scruff as you've got something to hold on to. Ted's never really that keen around your face, mate, are you? This is one area that obviously picks up all their food, their water, and is often moist, so any little bit of dust will cling in there. Again, keep using your other hand and feel for any tangles in there. Working underneath the ears as well. Other areas as well with dogs that have got long ears, the edge of their ears get quite knotty, especially when they're sniffing and eating. They can pick up a lot on the edges of their ears. Now Teddy's actually got a couple of knots in his ears. His ears are quite thick and heavy. I don't know whether you can see there. Try and get a better look. It's quite soft and it's starting to form a knot. We can see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and work as much of it out with a slicker brush as I possibly can. And then I will show you how to cut it with some scissors if I can't get it all out. Obviously you don't want to pull your dog's skin if you're working very hard on it by brushing, because it can get quite sore. So if they won't tolerate it anymore, the best thing to do is to get some scissors, obviously safely on it, just to save the dog getting irritable and not behaving itself, and then you're fighting with it, and then it just makes it a hard situation for both of you, and then they won't want you to do it again. So again, keep working all the way around, making sure you're getting all the way through, especially, as I say, on the edges of the ears. Yeah, see, there is quite a knot forming there. I'll try and brush as much as possible to release as much as the fur from around the knot as I possibly can. Good boy. Good boy there. Okay, I'm going to get some scissors onto that now so you can see how I'm going to remove it. Now, I'm only going to show you with some straight scissors. I wouldn't normally use these to remove a knot. I would generally use my thinners or my chunkers but I obviously don't expect anyone to have any of those at home. So if I show you with some straight scissors, now always you want to be working away from your dog. Certainly if they're going to jiffle or move, you don't want to be cutting towards them, and certainly you don't want to be stabbing yourself. So what we'll do is find the knot, try and get all of the other wispy bits of hair away from the area, so you can try and save it as much as possible. Okay, so I'm just getting all the wispy bits away. Here it is. It's actually here, so it's away from the skin. I haven't got to take, too much off. So again, take your scissors and get as close to the knot as possible, and then just take it off. What you sometimes find is if it's a tight knot, you can cut actually at the knot if it's not too far, not too close to the skin, and then it will break it up, and then you can actually work with your brush and release the rest of the knot. You can't always do that, but it then saves the rest of the fur around it. Again, just keep on working the ends. And inside, I always hold onto the ear leather so his ear is firm in my hand. Okay, also working whilst we're still on the head, underneath their chin and their muzzle. I've kept Ted's collar on. Again, it's good for you pet owners whilst you haven't got any other restraints, so you can hold on with your other hand to their collar. But if your dog wears its collar all the time, work around that area. Again, it will create friction and knots. Let's keep on working through. So whilst we're still working on the head area, we will concentrate on, as all you cockapoo and combination coated doggy owners are used to, the fur growing between their eyes and the visor growing in front of their face, and they can't see where they're going. So the best thing between now and your dog seeing the groomer, just trim little and often. Obviously be careful because your dog's eyes are extremely sensitive and precious. But certainly keep trimming away. I always think it's just not fair on the dog if they can't see properly. So as you can see with Teddy's eyes at the minute, the fur is starting to grow up into his line of vision. So again, taking your straight scissors, because I very much doubt anyone has got anything different. What you need to do is obviously brush down the muzzle, so you're just concentrating on the hair that is growing in front of his eyes. Again, your dog might not like you holding its face, but all you're wanting to do is clear the bit that is in the centre of his nose. So again, Teddy, holding on, take your scissors. This time obviously you've got to have to face the dog. Get as close as you can to the skin as possible and snip. Best to snip in a triangular shape. Oh, he's now decided today. Triangular shape. It's in a point, so you know, so the base of it is keeping short, and then it will stay short in the middle of his eyes. So again, if you can't get it all once, just keep snipping, little and often. It will keep your dog comfortable before he gets back to the groomers, and obviously be able to see. So again, and I'm going to work with my scissors down this time because I'm working on the opposite side. And again, just snip there. As gently as you possibly can, obviously making sure that your dog is as comfortable as possible. Also, just going on from that, once I've brushed out Teddy's muzzle, some bits where he licks with his tongue goes up, and it can get quite matted with food or bone, whatever he's been having. Again, just snip those out. If it gets too much with a brush for them, just snip it out. It's not going to cause too much issue for when it goes back to the groomers. So the next part to look at is his visor. Now the best thing to do, I mean Teddy hasn't long had a groom, hence the reason why he's quite short in some areas. Brush the fur forward on his forehead, so you're bringing it forward, and then you can just snip across, snip, so you're basically thinking of it as a fringe. So just snip along. I'm not going to take too much off Ted's because he's going to have a full groom soon anyway, and then brush back. That's obviously taken out the weight of his curls falling forward. So although you can see he's got quite a short bit there now, it's going to help him for the next few weeks, and he'll be able to see where he's going. And if you just brush and titivate a bit, you can see where the other long furs are. So you can again just go for another snip and brush it away, or you can blow it away. So that's Ted, and best way how to manage their fur on their head and around their muzzle. Good boy there. And keep working round underneath the chin. That's where the food and everything gets stuck. Now one of the other places for attention, as I say, is not as, it doesn't get as matted as some of the other areas, are tails. I'll just move you back there and work on Ted's tail. Ted has quite a wispy tail. It's not very thick and fluffy for a cockapoo. Again, always try and because their curls are everywhere, trim up around the bum area as well if you can, because that's obviously where the bits get stuck. And as you can see on Teddy, he gets quite compact curls around on his legs, although it is quite straight around his bum. He gets quite compact on the places where he lays. So again, just keep lifting the fur up and brushing down. You'll know how well you're doing, as I say, because the curls become straight. Good boy. Always on the back legs, take particular notice on the insides. Again, that's another friction area and the places where the dirt and debris and everything gathers, and it can cause quite a bit of problems when it comes to groomers getting in there and keeping it nice and clean. Good boy. Well, tails can get quite tangled again, so if you do come across a knot in any place, just snip it out. So as you can see, most of the curls are out of his tail now, and it's quite fluffy. Isn't that nice? Yeah. Good boy. Just keep working all the way. As I said in the beginning, if your dog doesn't tolerate it particularly well, little and often, and if they keep moving, just work on another space, another area. But whatever you can do that will help your dog and get used to you grooming it will be a benefit to you and the groomer. Because the last thing that we want to see are dogs that have been completely unkept, that have been perhaps quite uncomfortable with not having a brush and can be matted, because the hardest thing to do is needing to have to snip a whole coat off due to it being matted, and these poodle coats can really tend to do that. Now the other thing is to look for the fur on their pads and around their toes. So I don't know how I'll best be able to show you. This is the other area I mentioned earlier to look at. You want some scissors again. This is where it grows. It grows on their pads and in between toes. So if you can, just try and keep it clean. Just check after walks and things. Just snip, again, little bits. If you can, separate the toes. Separate the toes with your thumb or your finger and snip in between. So cut in between the toes and around the pads. And any fur that's sort of growing long down onto the pads, it's worth a trim. Simply because they're the bits that are going to collect all the dirt and debris. I think that's it.
I hope that you found this video helpful for looking after your own dog and helping them with their grooming. It just leaves me to say a huge thank you to Claire for all her help with making this video and giving you so much useful help and advice. If you found this helpful, please click on or around this video to subscribe to our YouTube channel or to like our Facebook page. Thank you and see you next time.